Are you on vacation?
Yeah, the bid's closed this week. The offices are closed, so out and about and around.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for coming.
Hello.
Pleasure.
I know this is where you all want to be the week between Christmas and New Year's.
Well, at least we didn't have to go to outside.
That is true, although today wasn't horrible.
No, it wasn't.
Let's get started and see how quickly we can get through everything. Our first item needs a vote. Jesse, do I have a quorum?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was yelling into the mic when I was muted. Yes, give me one moment, please.
Yep. Looks like I've got a quorum.
You do have a quorum.
Okay, the first item needs a vote. It's a presentation by the Chelsea Land Use Committee regarding the Flatiron bid extension. This is time sensitive, so it needs to get in. So that's why we're doing it at exec. And I'm going to give it to Paul and Betty.
Paul.
Thanks, Betty. So this is actually the last step in the legislative approval process for the Flatiron Business Improvement District to expand into expand their term. We've had multiple presentations on this. The executive committee has seen multiple presentations on this. What's in Community Board 4 is based about 3 blocks on the west side of 6th Avenue. So we're really a minor percentage of the expansion. Majority of the expanded bid is in Community District 5. They have given their approval to the expansion. We had previously approved all other presentations, and so this letter today is simply joining the chorus that we've already sung and supporting Community Board 5's decision to support the expansion and just having our voices heard to say we approve it.
Does anyone have any questions?
JD.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Paul, thank you. And Betty, do we have a voice then or a vote or a non-voting membership on the Flatiron?
Yes, we do.
As well. Okay.
I think that's going to be Tina DeFisiliano, who lives over right in there.
Okay.
She's been doing it. She's been doing it for a little less than a year at this point.
Okay. Thanks.
All right, any other questions? All right, I'll take a motion for a vote then.
So moved.
And I got a second from JD. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone
Aye.
opposed? All right, that passes.
Thank you all very much.
I jumped right into this and I didn't even welcome our guests. We actually do have 3 members of the public here. So I want to back up and formally welcome them to the executive committee meeting for Manhattan Community Board 4 for the month of December. I actually see somebody has a hand up. So I'm going to ask Jesse to move Bobby Barnett over and see what's on Bobby's mind. I was going to say that you can raise your blue hand and then we'll call on you, but now you see how it works. Bobby, what's on your mind? You got to take yourself off mute.
Bobby, you there?
Okay, well, we tried. Let's, Jess, is your co-presenter here with you?
Yeah, they are. Let me bring them over.
All right. That's Emily, right? Yeah, okay.
Lindsay.
Great. And apologies in advance, everyone. I'm having some internet challenges today, but I think, Will, you said it's my turn?
It is your turn, Jess. We are going to talk about, this is a budget task force issue. So I'm handing this over to our second vice chair, Jessica Chait.
Great, thank you. So all of you will remember, as part of the budget task force effort this year, we did a community-wide survey. So in addition to every committee sharing their priorities and a revisiting of priorities in light of the pandemic, we also committed to issuing a survey which went out to far and wide, and we had over 300 responses that were brought in. And we really viewed this as an opportunity to, in past years, people would come in to meetings, sign up, and we had much more of obviously an in-person and public presence. And we wanted to make sure that despite being online and despite all of the things that maybe keep us further apart this year, that we didn't miss that opportunity. We reflected on that information as we put forward our priorities for this year. But we also were very lucky to be connected to Emily Goldman and the group at BetaNYC to really look at how we could dive into this data a little bit more. And together with her team, who's been incredibly dedicated, put in some real hours into looking at the data, not so much to understand what is the priority, but really to help us parse through all of the very many responses. And I think, as I shared with this group previously, certain things fit into multiple categories. People said that their priority was housing, or rather I said it was parks, but really it was about the number of people who were living in parks. And so really that needed to go under housing. And Emily, together with her team, has really parsed through all of this and has prepared for us essentially a condensed survey, which we encourage each committee to really dive into and look at more closely. And I'm going to ask Emily to kind of explain how everyone on her team has worked on this. Maybe you can introduce the team for us. And as important as the data itself, this is also an opportunity to look at Airtable, which is a great tool that is actually available to our community board as well as others, and is a great vehicle for essentially parsing and looking at information. And so we thought that this opportunity to hear from BetaNYC could give us a better look at our own data, but also introduce all of us briefly to a tool that we could use for potential other projects. So with that, Emily, if you can introduce your team and give us a brief description of BetaNYC, and then maybe you can turn it over to the folks who really dug into this to offer a quick look at the data.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Jess. Thanks so much. And Jesse, thank you too for engaging us in this project with you all. So I direct the Civic Innovation Fellowship Program at BetaNYC. It's an annual program with CUNY undergraduate students. We teach them open data, and then we work with them on all kinds of projects that serve the city and Manhattan community boards. I'm joined with Z today, who's going to, there he is, who's a valiant team member and the Airtable whiz on the group. And I'm going to turn it over to him. He's produced some slides that will walk you through some of what we've done. But yeah, we definitely enjoyed this opportunity to help this board, whom we've had a relationship with for years now, starting with the creation of this tool called BoardStat that some of you may be aware of. BetaNYC created BoardStat about 3 or 4 years ago, 5 years ago, maybe at this point, starting with some in-depth interviews with Jesse Bodine and other district managers. So we loved this opportunity to sort of think through how digital surveys like this may become more popular moving forward, how this could be potentially a prototype for your board again and for other boards. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Z, who has some slides, and we'll be here for questions and discussion.
Awesome. Thanks, Emily. Just a really quick one with the slides, and then I'm going to show you a quick demo of filtering through Airtable to find insights or filter for specific agencies that are related to your committees. So the agenda is going to be very quick. We're going to view the original response data. I'm going to go through how that kind of looks, and then we're going to view through the summary Airtable that we have produced and show you how to filter by agency. Again, this is just a really quick introduction to BetaNYC. We make data easy to use, so you can make informed decisions using your expertise in your communities. We mainly do 3 types of things. So we have a tech and career pipeline where we train CUNY students to use open data and become public servants and hopefully work in government agencies or in community boards. We host public engagement events. So we host a ton of trainings. We attend community board meetings. And then lastly, we build research and tools, which is what this is a part of. So this is a part of the RADAR program, which we help provide research or data assistance requests to mostly anybody. And we'll provide you with a link if you want to submit your own data or assistance requests. I mean, data and research and data assistance requests. Sorry, Emily, I'm butchering the acronym. So really quickly, I think Jesse's going to send out the links here, but essentially what we did is from the responses, we created separate views to organize these explanations. And these views are sorted by just in general, like by each response, but also we also created views that sorted by each district needs category. So if you go to this link here, bit.ly/beta_CB4 all, you'll get to over here. I think you have to log into the Airtable, but on the side here, you'll get all these various views, and then you can see you can view each entry by a row. Just kind of, it might be overwhelming, but yeah, you can just scroll side to side, or if you click into a card, you can see like the card view and how that person kind of responded for each of these questions. We stripped this off of address information, so you can't identify this person. And then we also have these views on the side for each of the service request categories. So if you want to view it, all the responses for the healthcare and human services, you can, or if you want to go down to city services, you can also do that. If you want to filter for a specific like text string, you can do Control F, and then you can quickly search through like how many entries mention trash or something like that. So the next thing we did was we summarized all the responses. So because there was I think an overwhelming number of responses, 300, as Jessica said, we kind of summarized all these into specific topics and specific agencies. So if you go to this link here, bit.ly beta_CB4 summary, you'll get this general gallery here. And then you can kind of see what is mentioned most. So in this case, for this survey, mostly homeless population is mentioned. It was mentioned 62 times, followed by DSNY and followed by DOE complaints. So you can go into each of these and you can read in depth in notes specific comments that we kind of curated out of the survey responses. And lastly, you can filter for specific agencies that are relevant to your committee. So if you click on the top left and you add a filter and you switch this over to agencies, you can select a specific agency. So maybe I'm looking at DOT complaints. I can just search with DOT, toggle that on, and I can see all the DOT related DOT related mentions and issues. So pedestrian safety due to out of control bicycle riders and scooters were mentioned 5 times, followed by encouragement of bicyclists and more protected bike lanes were mentioned also 5 times. So Airtable just makes it slightly simpler to kind of filter through all these entries. A thing I would like to note is that the topics were created based on similarity to other explanations or responses that we collected. So this is purely from what we think, what BetaNYC thinks should be topics. So we highly encourage you to kind of view the raw data yourselves, just in case if we missed anything. But I think we try to capture most of the data in these topics. And also if we kind of have really specific stuff, it will be written in notes and it will be also tallied up there. And lastly, there's also a table for specific service requests if you would like to read about that, because some of these responses really targeted specific corners of streets or specific parks and stuff like that. So if you would like to read all that, but that's mostly it. So thank you.
Thank you, Z. And I want to encourage everyone, It may look intimidating because there is a lot of functionality, but don't be intimidated. There's summary sheets, and I think it would be really, obviously as chairs and executive committee members, you'll use the data as you wish, but I'd really encourage people to share the committee links or the links with instructions for how to get to the committee information with your teams, with the committees, so that they can really see what's top of mind. And I think people will find it very validating that many of the issues that your committees are discussing are things that are reflected here and reflect the needs that community board 4 members feel are really important. But I think there may be additional texture as well as additional information that you can get. So don't be intimidated. Jesse and I are novices, but we are here to help you as well if you want to dig in deeper. And I want to thank the whole BetaNYC team, but really Z dug into this, spent a lot of time recoding, looking at, is this sanitation? Is this transportation? Making those hard decisions for us and put in real elbow grease into this, and we're very grateful. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you again, Jessica. And you can always email me if you need any direct help with Airtable or anything relating to the survey, or again, if you have any research or data assistance requests that you would like to find out more about. So you can reach me at z@beta.nyc. Yeah, thank you for inviting me to this.
Thank you. Are there any questions while we have Emily and Z with us?
Mike Noble has his hand raised, and I think Marty has his hand raised, his actual hand raised.
Yeah, Mike, then Marty.
Yeah, hi, Z, thank you very much for that. I've done data sets in open data, and I have not used this Airtable thing, and I wonder how do they work together? Can I in fact do a data set on Airtable, because it seems so much easier to use, and the graphic user interface is way better than open data is for doing that. It's a very tedious thing, as you know, and finding complaints, various columns, for example, can take forever. You can have 100 complaints in one column, and then that one straggler in the next one single straggler in another column. Then you're going to miss it, right? Does Airtable allow you to search the data by text and find those complaints, for example, in the various columns? Does that let you do that?
So you can, I think you can export like a smaller subset of the open data set. So you would have to actually use the open data portal to filter out for a smaller amount of columns, since it can't handle the full 3-in-1 data set. But after you do that, you can import to Airtable and you can filter by certain terms and all that stuff.
Okay, but they work separately. You got to import one into the other, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Marty DeCat.
Would you be good enough to show the link again? I didn't copy it down.
Yeah, I can post the link in the chat, and also I think Jesse's going to share that, but I'll post the link right now.
Very quickly, the link is in the report, the draft report that I included into the Dropbox. But what we'll do is we'll send everything around again with maybe it highlighted specifically so everybody can see it again.
No, thank you, Jesse.
Leslie.
Hey, this might be a question for Jessica and Jesse, but can this be used on a rolling basis, or is every time you get a complaint or an issue into the office and it could be kind of uploaded, or is this just for this one specific survey and that's it?
No, so that's something we can take. We can have a whole kind of conversation about this offline too, if we want, if for the people that are interested. So no, Airtable is actually originally, tell me if I'm wrong, Emily, was introduced to all of the boards as a constituent record keeping device. And some boards have really sort of used it, and other boards have not. We have yet to. We didn't sort of necessarily feel like that was sort of our the weak link in our organization. But yeah, it certainly can be. You can create its own and your own way of putting in that data, so then it records it in a certain way, so that later, if you wanted to track how many complaints about something we got, we certainly could.
Exactly. Like if something came up in March and a lot of people are calling or asking about it, we can then go back to the data and see what that is
Sure. Yeah.
predominantly. Okay.
Okay, Betty?
I think this is very cool, what you're doing here. And I have two questions. Can you sort the data by geographic area, like Chelsea versus Hell's Kitchen? And the other question was, is BetaNYC a nonprofit or a city agency or a city division?
Yeah, BetaNYC is a nonprofit. We work really closely with the Manhattan Borough President. And then through that connection, we work closely with all the community boards. And for filtering Chelsea and Hell's Kitchen, we don't necessarily have the summary slash topics separated by Chelsea and Hell's Kitchen, but if you look into responses, and I can also show you the filter for it, you can, there's a filter where you can say, hey, I want all the responses that checked Hell's Kitchen or Chelsea or both or something like that.
But the person doesn't say where they live.
We remove that information, so it wouldn't personally identify anybody, but if you would like, we can possibly make a map of that is slightly anonymized, and we can show you that.
Okay, well,
that was actually something we did discuss and ultimately decided that because people may be living in a certain area but working in another area, or that like where they live doesn't necessarily determine where their comment was specific to. And so we felt like it was just easier to pull it out entirely. But as Z said, we can filter by city agency, and maybe that's something we want to be more specific about in future surveys if we find this useful.
okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Good job.
To follow up on that, I can tell you that our borough president loves data, loves collecting data, analyzing data. Jesse's smiling, and she is probably the single biggest proponent and client of BetaNYC.
Lola, I have a question for Z or Jessica.
Go ahead, Maria.
I just wanted to ask, because I'm trying to filter by agency now, and I'm having a little bit of trouble. I found one way, but who can I have a conversation with about that later on to find out more?
Marie, you could definitely email me, and I can show you like I can walk you through everything. Yeah. Okay. So you can. I'll post my email in the chat.
Please, thank you.
One of the things that me and Jessica were thinking, and again, this is if the co-chairs are open to this, is that talking about this at the committee level and trying to maybe find someone from your committee, each of the committees that would be interested to sort of take a look at this and kind of report back to the committee, whether it be the co-chair, if it's one Maria wants to do it, or there's someone else on the committee that might be, kind of interested in this kind of thing. Take a look at it, look at it, what's involved, what sort of crosses over into their to the committee that they sit on, and kind of report back and see if there's things that they want to bring to the committee's attention, if there's possible agenda items, if there's, collaborations of some sort, whatever. And so I think we would be open to seeing if those people were selected, to then maybe do a round of really kind of training on or trying to getting them, up to speed on how to use Airtable the best way. So that was one of our thoughts. So it really sort of comes out of back to each committee to take a chance to take a look at this stuff.
Any other questions or comments? All right, then.
I just wanted to say again, just a thank you to Emily and G. They did a wonderful job. And again, if anybody would like to talk about how to use Airtables in different capacities, I'm obviously completely open to that.
Yeah, I want to thank you both again, and thank Jessica for working with you guys to bring this to us.
Thank you all so much for having us, and congratulations on getting such a good turnout on that survey. Really invested community members, so. Anyway.
It's a blessing and a curse, Emily.
That's right.
All right, so we're going to move on. Thank you again for coming.
Okay. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
I'm going to go back to Paul Devlin again. We've got another Chelsea land use letter that is time sensitive. This one is about a zoning issue. So I'm really going to let Paul explain it.
Thanks. This is the zoning text amendment for coastal flooding resiliency. After Superstorm Sandy, there were temporary measures put into place. And then across the city, they realized that many of these things had to stay in place permanently. We brought it before our Chelsea Land Use Committee in November, and it was a lot more daunting than we had initially supposed. So we had requested more information from DCP. We then I then presented to the Clinton Hell's Kitchen Land Use Committee on the issues. We had subsequent meetings with the Manhattan Borough President's Office, many other community board members, like Community Board 1, Community Board 2, other districts that are impacted by flooding issues were present. And a lot of the similar concerns came up where the flooding resiliency issues were really to protect homeowners in high flood areas like Far Rockaways and whatnot. But we had to take into consideration Chelsea historic districts. We had to take into consideration the Western Rail Yards of Hudson Yards and what impact these changes in zoning and regulations would allow. Because it took so much time, the clock has ticked out, and the letter had to be submitted before 5 p.m. today to get our comments in. So Betty, me, Lowell, Jesse, a couple of committee members, we got this letter finalized today and sent it in. So I think what we need to do is get approval from executive committee just to ratify the letter. If any, no, Jesse's shaking his head no. I think no. Okay, so no. Jesse, no. I agree with you, no.
I'm not trying to take the authority away from exec. I'm just saying the letter's out. What had to happen was it's gonna be ratified at full board.
Oh, at full board. Okay, my apologies.
I mean, putting it in front of exec, it's arbitrary at this point.
Yeah. All right, so this is
really just for exec's knowledge. I'm going to piggyback on that and say one thing. This was also presented to Borough Board for a vote. And like us, none of the other community boards had time to fully push this through their processes. So the vote from Borough Board on the zoning plan is not going to be held until the middle of January, at which point it may be a moot issue. But what Paul was saying about the other boards dealing with this, every board is dealing with this individually, and it was not ripe for Borough Board to opine on, even though it did come up at the last Borough Board meeting.
And I will say that by meeting with Borough Board members and other community district leadership, we were able to take some consistent themes across Manhattan, such that if we're all echoing the same points, perhaps DCP will incorporate some of the changes that we're proposing. If anybody has any questions on specifics, I can go through it, but the letter is in the Dropbox. You can read it. If you want to do an offline conversation with me, I'm knee deep in this, so can talk about it for hours.
Yeah, I will say that the Borough Board resolution reflected all of the issues that Paul and Betty brought up on the borough-wide call. So the Borough President's Office was very receptive to what Community Board 4 told them. Joe, you had a question.
Yeah, Betty and I spoke about this briefly last week, and we missed making the connection with the Chelsea Working Group. And so we have a whole series of recommendations that don't take the zoning into account. So I just started to look at it today, Paul, and I really need to give you some information as I get it understanding better, have a conversation with you and Betty about it. We may need to do something to add a little bit of an addendum to this, because some of the recommendations may undercut the feasibility of the specific things, the package we put together. So I'm not quite sure yet.
All right, Joe, I'm going to ask you to include me in that, because then I can take it back to Gail.
Okay, because that came out of the blue when we just finished it on Tuesday, and now I got to go through and scrub to see what is in conflict. That's all.
Yeah, and Betty and Betty and other members of the NYCHA working group, we did talk about it at the Chelsea Land Use Committee meeting. And so we did try to incorporate language that was reflective of the feedback that we had received from the working group. So hopefully there's not too many changes that need to be made.
There might be a conflict that we got to look at carefully.
Okay.
Yeah,
Also,
just-
I'd say that the borough president's office really was very constructive. Even though they didn't send in recommendations, they made a draft resolution that included measures that at least we felt more comfortable about, with requiring a special permit in special districts and historic districts. So they really advanced the thinking on a response that several community boards could stomach. So I'm not saying that helps the housing authority developments, but anyway, we'll talk more with you, Joe, about it.
Yeah, and Joe, I can take back whatever you come up with, and I'll bring it back to the borough president's office for the borough board resolution.
Because at first blush, it looks like it blows a $15 million hole in the plan. So I got to figure out how to fix that.
I'll take it out of your pocket, Joe.
Well, yeah, I apologize, Joe. It was.
No, I understand. We'll figure it out.
Met
Just wanted to
Monday
let you
night.
know.
The letter got drafted
No,
Friday.
I know it had to happen. I understand. 100%.
You know, and the feedback we got was that there was concern about design standards being inconsistent across a campus, and that the consensus was that if a building is outside of the floodplain, should have the same design standards as a building that's inside the floodplain, rather than having different design standards across the campus.
Got it. That's kind of abstract as opposed to the specifics that we were just recommended. So we got to reconcile them. That's all.
Joe, Fulton falls within the floodplain?
Part of it.
Part of it. So part of Fulton and part of Elliott both fall within the floodplain, but not all the buildings of either development. So,
And they're all on one zoning lot, which is like, we got to get through some of this complexity to figure out how to make it apply in a way that doesn't basically fuck it up, but protects. That's the.
And also, Joe, keep in mind, DCP may not take our advice anyway. So this may be.
Yeah, but this is a pretty high profile thing to be fucked up, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Well, we'll deal with it. We can also.
But how do we handle this? How do we handle this at its full board? Well, if
the
there are
letter's
amendments.
gone already, so it's for
The
ratification.
letter is gone already, yes. So what is? the
Well, we may do a
situation
supplemental letter.
We can do a supplemental letter
at full board.
at full board.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, it's for ratification. So if there's a friendly amendment, if there's text and language we add, we can add it to the existing letter and have that conversation at full board and vote it back.
We can add it and then send a replacement letter if we need to. There are ways to handle it, Bert.
Yeah, this is years in the making, so it'll.
All right, so since you were unmuted, the next item on the agenda is an update from the working group.
Okay.
I will say, and it comes up in the small meeting report, that we hosted a forum, not for NYCHA residents, but for the rest of the neighboring communities on the 17th. Joe, Betty, Mike were instrumental in putting that together. Maria helped me fielding the questions that night. Jesse, of course, pulled the whole thing together, but we had a really well-attended and productive forum on the development and on the plan that followed 5 presentations to NYCHA residents. But now I'm getting into Joe's territory, so I'm going to shut up and let him explain.
Since our executive committee met last, there have now been a total of 5 engagement sessions with the Chelsea NYCHA tenants, and all on Zoom, and one with the community board and the broad public. It is pretty amazing because in all those sessions, the majority of people leading the presentations were NYCHA tenants. Hector, Mary McGee, Miguel, Darlene, sorry, I'm blanking. But I mean, they led them, and they answered. Lenny too. They answered questions. The first session that was close to 100 people, 85 people in it, and I will tell you, the NYCHA tenants pretty much were the NYCHA tenants who called in. Also, they were not only in English, but there were translation lines in Mandarin, Cantonese, Spanish, and Russian. So everyone had full access here. And the questions were fantastic. They were basically concerned about people's lives, how it would affect them, what would happen, and very detailed and thoughtful questions. The overwhelming majority of people who were on these meetings were very much in favor of the plan. It was remarkable to see the change. But most important, remarkable to see the NYCHA tenants, many of whom were seriously skeptical about the whole idea, actually being thoughtful and putting it out there and saying things like, I didn't believe in this. I thought this was crap. And now here we are speaking in favor of it. So it really worked well. And I think we've gotten very, very good feedback on it. And the next step is now the writing of the final report. And there are the three committees. The last committee submitting its section was the Capital Finance Subcommittee because of the complexity of what we were doing. That was submitted on Tuesday. And now the report is going to the full working group to do edits and changes and the final reconciliation. I will note for the record, though, that some of the commitments made by the mayor's office, there was some backtracking on in the last week. So now there's a political discussion back and forth to settle those. But I think they're going to come to a good fruition. So our forum, according to Jesse, 170 people have looked at it. We had about attending that night, Jesse, about 35 people, right? Something like that. You're on mute.
Yeah, about 35, 40 people from the public.
40 people. Right. So, I mean, in total, we're talking, it is close to maybe 200 people who attended all these sessions. So, and Lowell, what was your impression? Because you were hearing this for the first time. You're on mute.
It was really quite impressive. Like Joe said, the way the tenants have taken ownership of this entire process. The capital finance piece Joe has been leading the charge on, but the tenants actually understand it and they
100%.
get it and they're involved, and it really is their plan. There was one person who attended our forum who is intent on trying to blow holes in the plan because that's just what she does. And even the tenants were saying, no, that's not the way it works. So it was really kind of impressive.
So,
Joe?
yeah.
What's the next step? You write a report. Who does the report go to? What happens to the report?
So the report serves a number of functions. One, it's a communication document. The second one is it's a political record of what has been agreed to. I realized midway through of writing this stuff, this is pretty much the points of agreement that we're writing on Chelsea NYCHA. So it gets memorialized, all the specific items. And it took us a while as a group to understand what we were doing there. And then this forms the basis for a lot of the provisions in the report will be included in the future RFP to developers for the Chelsea NYCHA project. And that's some of the sticking points back and forth. For example, we have negotiated that the NYCHA tenants will be on the selection committee for the developer, for the RFP. That's unheard of. That's a whole new breaking, now the mayors, they're very nervous about how to word that. It's fine. We're going to get it in one way or the other. The NYCHA tenants will be involved in the committee that actually deals with the design, the construction, and the future management. That's another miracle and a half to happen. But most important, all the protections that they currently have as NYCHA tenants will get carried over and get beefed up in their leases. So in the other prior RAD deals, those have been cut down or changed or done things that are not favorable to the tenants. In this case, they're enhanced. So I think I made it clear in our meeting. This is the beginning. Once this goes out, it's a whole different level of having to hang in there. So it's gonna be a long. This is a 4-year project at least. So,
JCL.
Thanks, Joe. What points of agreement? Not a binding, standing document. What is your expectation that this is followed through with by whatever our next administration is? What legal framework exists and provides you to do what you're doing? There's no ULURP taking place. The development will be considered as of right right? That's
So
So
there's a
piece do
couple
you
of,
have?
yeah, a couple of decision points. The RFP will go out during this administration. And it's our expectation the developer will be selected during this administration. So that means baked into the deal will be a number of the points. And a developer, and sorry, in the development world, will understand they're not going to get chosen without agreeing to these points. So having that in place, Jeffrey, it's like a ULURP got started, but won't get finished in one
Sure,
administration.
right. I guess you seem to have faith in an RFP being released and a developer chosen under this administration, which is just a year left. So I guess if that can happen, then that's a really good thing.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
they made a major commitment on that. Can I speak on behalf and defend this administration's high level of competency? Maybe not, but I can say they're working on it. You know.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Jeffrey, it would become part of his legacy that he saved NYCHA.
That is true. No, I think this is really, it provides, there's a great PR thing that the administration could actually do good by here. So I hope that we gain from their ability to actually execute on this.
Do you mean open mouth, don't insert foot?
Pretty much. Any other questions about Jesse? Go ahead.
So Joe and Maria, I wanted to confirm, I think when we originally thought of this forum was one of the after actions would be it finally coming to your guys' committee to have that discussion. Then once it was public and kind of gone through, are we including this on your agenda for January to?
The report won't be finalized until middle of January. So I think it's on the February agenda, Jesse, makes more sense.
That's fine. I just wanted to. Okay.
Right, and then the board will be able to vote on it and support the plan. Okay, thank you, Joe. Thank you, Betty. Thank you, Mike, for all your work on this. The next item on the agenda is just to remind you all to check the pink sheets, which are no longer pink sheets, to make sure you know what your agenda is. If you have changes for your committee agenda for the month of January, for January's meetings.
Can I add just a couple things?
Of course.
Right now, just for the full board agenda, I believe we have tentatively, we have the Midtown South precinct coming per, what our usual thing is to have one of the commanding officers from one of the precincts come and present. So we're hoping to have Midtown South come next week. And then we're also going to have the Ryan Chelsea Clinton Health Center. We thought they asked to give a brief presentation on everything that they're doing around COVID, specifically around testing and tracing and things like that, and the vaccine, obviously. So they asked to attend. And so that's for the full board. And then for the committee schedule, there might have been a previous version of the committee schedule sent out to you guys in the first that had some incorrect dates, so I apologize. I think that's been resolved. One thing to note just is that both land use committees are meeting the same night in January, just because of the timing schedule conflicts, and so that's the 13th.
We will be cloning Paul Devlin.
One group will be on one will be normal Zoom, and the other one will be using WebEx. So.
Okay, so that's where we are with this. My report, December was as busy as any other month. We are continuing to work behind the scenes to get the tow pound moved. We are continuing to work behind the scenes to try and move one of the hotels off of 36th Street. Those are ongoing issues that I spend a lot of time on the phone with. They are not formal meetings. There's nothing I can really report at this point, but we are continuing to push those two issues. The NYCHA working group you heard about, including our forum. In addition to the behind the scenes work on 36th Street, Corey's office basically hosts with DHS a monthly meeting about what's going on that Maria and Jesse attended. I think it's every 2 weeks, isn't it?
No, so I think you might be conflating meetings, Lowell. Yeah, Corey's office does that every 2 weeks meeting, which is harm reduction meetings. And
Right.
we actually host the monthly provider meeting with DHS. It's our Zoom. So
Yeah,
we,
all right. So there is a bi-weekly meeting and then there's a monthly meeting,
Yeah.
all covering a lot of the same ground, and trying to ameliorate a mess that the administration caused. While I'm talking about Maria, a special shout out to Maria for single-handedly running a coat drive with Jesse's help. Maria, you want to tell us how many coats you brought in and gave out?
Wait, I didn't present to you guys already? Oh my God, sorry. I've said it so many times. Jesse, you might have to help me with the numbers. So we did it on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 2 days of collections, 1 day of the giveaway. We had folks, actually, mostly I would say from family shelters, who came to pick up socks and coats, like from the Row, which is like on 44th Street, the Travelers Inn on 42nd. I can't remember what other sites.
Covenant
Yeah, there were some youth from Covenant House. We even had some street homeless folks come in and pick up some things. We did have items left over, and Jesse contacted BVSJ, who came and picked up socks. And then we also had some children's coats and socks left over, and we brought that over to, I'm laughing because I have an image in my brain of us bringing some of the bags and how there's a picture of it. Jesse carrying some of the bags on his shoulders. And we brought it to
So
a
he was
family
like a
shelter.
Jewish Santa Claus? Is that what it kind of looked like in a sense?
I was calling it Sherpa. We were calling it Sherpa.
That was it. That's what we called it. Yeah, so we did good. And a few days later was the winter storm that we had. So it was perfect timing. And I did tell Jesse in a public meeting that I was thinking that maybe we should do something again. So we'll talk about it more offline.
Do you have any idea how many coats you turned over?
Yes, I wrote it down. In total, I would say about 100. About 100.
Thank you very
more
much.
or less.
Maria.
And hundreds of socks. I mean, we delivered not the one. I missed, I think, the majority of the pickup from people stopping by, but we had so many socks left over that I think we dropped off at least 150 pairs of socks to Black Vets, and then probably another 100 pairs of children's socks to Acacia at the two family shelters with children on 39th Street. And
That's
then
great.
40 to 50 jackets that were left over from the thing.
Yeah, for children.
Right,
Yeah,
for
the adults, most of the adults things went.
Bravo, Maria. Bravo, Jesse.
I just want to give, and I'll say this at the full board, but because it's a public meeting too, I wanted just to give it a special, Michelle Adams of all people, really did, she reached out personally and did a huge drop off for us. And so I just wanted to thank her.
Okay. Continuing with the small meetings, and Mike, I do see your hand up. I will get to you. There was a meeting with the borough president's office that you've heard about already about the resiliency zoning issues. There was also a meeting with the borough president's office, Gail's Manhattan Borough President Office Helicopter Task Force that I attended along with Alan and Madame Berthet. And I got Gail at the very end of that meeting to agree to put on her list of accomplishable goals, moving the heliport out of Hudson River Park. Remains to be seen whether or not that's going to happen, but it ended up on Gail's short list. Most of the meeting was more about the helicopters that are taking off in Jersey, buzzing the city and leaving. It really bugged me, quite honestly, because they seem to be saying that the people who are complaining about helicopter noise are the people who are working from home, who aren't used to being home due to COVID. But the people who are renting the helicopters are people who are tourists or traveling and have nothing to do because of COVID. So it seemed to be a disconnect to me. But I did get Gail to include the 30th Street heliport on her, short list of accomplishable tasks. And then finally, Joe, Maria, and Jesse met with the Joan of Arc residents on 24th Street. I don't know if you guys want to say anything about that. Not hearing anything, I will go to Mike Noble and his question.
No, it's not a question. I just want to fill you in on something.
Go ahead.
We had the test and trace people appear at our last general meeting. And as it turned out, I was working on the minutes on Friday, a couple of days later. I get a call from my son who tells me he just got tested positive, right when I started doing this. So I tell Leslie, she says, well, make sure you get a hold of them because they've got this hotel for him to go to. Well, he didn't want to go, so we stayed home, which meant that I'm quarantined, he's quarantined, and I'm working with the people who Jesse got the emails for that presented, and they helped me. They got this thing rolling for me. And it's a great concept. They monitor you, and they track you. They keep track of you during the quarantine. You got to check in every day with your symptoms and all that other business. They also give you a package, this take care package. It has masks and all that business, and an oximeter, thermometer, and a test kit. Yeah. So someone like myself who's been exposed can now test at home and see whether he's actually coming down with it or not.
Are you okay, Mike?
So, yeah, it's all past tense. I got off quarantine a couple of days ago.
Okay.
But I must tell you, had they not presented to us and had Leslie not reminded me of how this thing works, I wouldn't have known what to do. All right. They did not, even though Chris, did this at the City MD, they were supposed to have gotten a hold of me and they didn't. I had to reach out myself. And so it's not foolproof. The thing isn't perfect yet. And I'm still lacking I didn't get the test kit. I've been working on that for like a couple of weeks. In any event, it's there. If you get exposed, use this thing.
I can tell you that the Test and Trace Corps is presenting every 2 weeks to the community boards, to community board chairs or district managers. And Mike, if you have specific comments you want me to pass along, I will do so.
Yeah, I will. I'm in direct conversation with them at this point because they're like working through the bugs themselves.
Yep.
And I'm, giving them another bug.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll make sure to follow up. Jeffrey? No, you got on.
Here I am. Did I miss you not mentioning the Empire? No.
No,
not
you didn't.
Happening.
Mentioning it didn't end up on my report because I forgot you did it. So tell us
So
about
should
it.
I?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that was my bad, Jeffrey. I think I'm still having,
I wasn't going to throw you under the bus. Don't worry about it, Jesse.
Sorry, Lowell, you should have texted me and told me not to do it either then. But
I can't tell you not to do what I didn't remember happened.
The governor's office, actually ESD, the Empire State Development Corporation, which is in charge of the redevelopment plan around Penn Station, Moynihan Station, so the Empire Station complex, called their community advisory committee meeting to be held a couple of days before, I think it was the Tuesday before Christmas, maybe. And at that meeting, they presented the preliminary findings and responses to what will become the draft EIS, right? Is that correct, Paul, in terms of the phase that we're in here? And there were some key things that we were looking to learn about. Key among them was whether or not they're expanding the scope area, the study area around the complex. That's not being considered. We'll learn a whole lot more when the formal report is released, at which time we'll have another opportunity to respond, and the study will formally begin in the spring. And this is all about basically creating a whole bunch of new development around Penn Station and the Moynihan Station complex to improve and enhance that area.
Joe?
This is for the development rights transfer district, right?
I don't know that they refer to it as a transfer district, but it's a very specific district they're creating.
They did in the original presentation.
Sell development rights.
Yeah.
I guess I wouldn't call it a transfer because they're just making the ability to develop in these places possible and bigger.
Jeff?
Because it's a GPP. It won't be a city process. Yep. There was two positives. CB4 and CB5 both had called for an increase in request in affordable housing. It was 100% commercial as it was put forth. And one of the sites in Board 4, of which we only have one, is actually now being considered for either a hotel or a mixed use site, which would include affordable housing. And they mentioned the number 30% at the site in CB4. And they're also looking at two potential sites for housing in CB5 as well. So we may actually get some affordable housing out of this and it won't just be 100% commercial.
When is the report coming out, Jeffrey?
I believe, I should have looked at my notes. See, here I was open my mouth because I remembered and then didn't refer to my notes before the meeting. I believe they told us it was formally coming out by the end of the year. I haven't got notification that it's out yet. So as soon as it is, ESD doesn't communicate at all with Jesse, unfortunately. So I end up having to loop him in and forward stuff to Jesse and Lowell accordingly. So as soon as I have that, I will be doing that.
All right. Thank you, Jeffrey, for that update. Did I miss anything with anyone else? Speak now or it never happened. All right. Thanks. District Manager's Report. Mr. Bodine.
Hi, everybody. Let's see. I don't really have that great news.
You have one good piece of news.
Oh, what's that? It's not
You
on
have
my
a home.
Oh, well, yes, we have a home. Well, we've had a home for a while. So, yeah, I'll go to that first. So our offices is slowly being set up. Nellie and Janine from the office actually spent the whole day came in for the day and spent the day in the office space, trying to working with the buildings, telecommunication people, Verizon, Spectrum, all of that, trying to set up all of our tech. And so our phone lines are up, which is good. Our fax lines are up. We don't have Wi-Fi yet, so we'll have to circle back on that. We'll be working on it, but we are slowly moving in and hopefully going to be running and stuff like that.
And we're actually paying for it. The controller's office actually finally approved the license agreement.
We're not deadbeats. We are beginning the conversation with DCAS about the permanent space, and we're hoping to stay in the building. Of course, I think the building wants us to stay, trying to find a slightly bigger space. My goal is always to be able to, my goal is to try to find a space in which we can conduct at least a legitimate committee meetings in, if need be, if we're looking towards the future. We're talking about 10 years, a 10-year lease. So I want to be able to, if the committee needs to meet and we don't have a space available for whatever reasons, we'll have one, be able to hold one in our own office. So that's my goal. So that's that.
And for the bad news.
So this doesn't really, fortunately, this doesn't affect our operation really that much, but I just want to report on it. So there's another set of cuts that have gone through with the January plan from the city. So FY21, we're going to be cut by another 3,500 and change from our current budget. And then we're going to lose, which we've already got, they already cut us about 8,000 and change previously. So we're going to do it. It's another 3,000 for this fiscal year. FY22 right now, they're putting it back to another 8,000. So I suspect another cut coming after that in the later part of FY22. Fortunately, it's all going to come out of personal services. We do have a bit of a cushion in that area. Which what it does mean is we won't be able to really have a part-time person that I can, have like a Katya, who anybody who on this call or in this meeting has ever worked with NYCHA knows that she was invaluable in terms of planning events, setting things up, data entry, keeping our website up to date. She did a lot of that where she really supported Nellie. She really supported Janine in sort of the kind of running, and she definitely helped me out with events. And so it's going to be tough. There's not enough money to sustain somebody for enough hours where they're just not going to constantly be looking for another gig. So it's just not worth it really to try to find somebody at this point. So we'll see in the, when maybe in the new year, we'll see what we have. But that's where we are money wise. But we won't affect any full-time staff, won't affect anything to do with the operations of the office at this point. And then the other thing is just to let everybody know that there's the Equal Employment Practice Commission is doing a borough-wide audit of all community boards' sexual harassment policy. Again, this doesn't really impact board members, anything like that. It impacts simply the office and the staff and us making sure we're following all of the rules. We are a little bit hamstringed because a lot of the rules require us to be posting things in our office, which we really haven't had an office. So, but besides that, it's an audit like any other audit. They'll come out with a report. We'll be able to respond. But so I think that's all I have, unless anybody has any questions.
Okay, we have one new business item, and I'm not sure if this is Paul or JD or Betty, but there is another zoning text.
JD.
I say Paul for the trifecta.
Jean Danielle, would you like to talk about the citywide hotel special permit zoning text amendment?
No, I would not.
What if I make you?
Why don't I lead it off? And so then, because it literally came in on Thursday or Wednesday afternoon.
Yep.
So it's really annoying, but another citywide text amendment on the hotel special permit. If everybody remembers correctly, we already had one of these back in 18 and 19. It was limited to M1 districts. From my quick read of this, again, before the holiday, I didn't get too deep into it, but my understanding is that this is broadening the scope of that special permit to include other districts beyond M1, to include some commercial districts and things like that. And I think that's the majority of the text. I'm sure there's devils always in the details. Public facilities are still excluded, which I know this is one of the things that our sticking points was with the previous previous permit. And there's some language in there that from my understanding, that sort of it's not a grandfathering, but it sort of allows people who get the permit to keep hold of it, past its, end date due to the economic impact of COVID. We're at the scoping for the EIS of this. The hearing is on the Friday, the 22nd of January. And the deadline for comment is the 1st of February, which is before our full board in February. So I guess the question to us today right now is whether we are wanting to put this on the scoping hearing, or have a scoping hearing basically on this for January for one or both of the land use committees. And then how do we, construct a response if we want to do so?
I think the de Blasio administration wants to put more homeless people out of the aggregate shelters into those hotels. I think that's part of the, is that right, Paul? No, just kidding.
I think, didn't Clinton Hell's Kitchen land use deal with this topic previously?
We did, Betty. That's why we think it's Chelsea's turn to.
Oh, no, you've got all the background and the insight.
Betty,
all right.
So how about if we?
I will draw
hold on. Jesse had an idea.
The three of you will draw straws later to see who's going to get the short straw. We're not going to burden the entire exec committee with this land use infighting.
Is there a Zoom app where they can draw straws and we see who ends up with?
Whoever doesn't have the fake mustache on, that's the one.
I honestly, I think Hell's Kitchen, Clinton should take it up. We have a lot of hotels. We've had a lot of problems. So absolutely no question. We can take it up. Betty can come to the meeting.
The problem is that we both have our meetings at the same night. And so maybe we find a way of doing some joint effort too. I'm happy to.
Yeah, the last letter was actually a joint letter from both committees, and the response to the first scope was actually from Chelsea. So I think both ideas are fine. I think if both of you guys want to put it on your agendas and have a discussion and then combine into one letter, it doesn't require a joint committee. It just means a joint. To me, it's a joint letter. You know, obviously, if for some reason there's something that's outstanding that one committee is in conflict with the other, we'll have to figure that out at exec.
That sounds reasonable. We can tackle it at Chelsea Land Use on the same day as Hell's Kitchen, and then we'll probably have less to add than Hell's Kitchen will have anyway. But
or we can just let the Paul Devlin clone take care of it all.
Yeah.
Does anyone have anything else? Because that's our formal agenda. Any other new business items, questions, comments, problems?
Yes.
Yes.
We have Frank and I have 2 items from BLP. We want to take a couple of minutes and talk about that.
All right, and then Alan, after that, I'll go to you. Go ahead, Bert.
Frank, do you want to start first, Frank?
No, why don't you go ahead? I forget what the second one was.
We had this very weird presentation for a new restaurant sidewalk cafe application, 18th Street and 10th Avenue, mostly on 10th Avenue, some of on 18th Street, sidewalk cafe, interior restaurant in a new building under construction. The actually weird in one sense because there are more tables on the street. And we're talking traditional sidewalk. We're not talking in the middle of the street or off the curb. Traditional sidewalk cafe. Though more tables out there than on inside. Even where they presented us with 2 options, an option 1 and option 2, one with less tables than the other outside. But even the one with less tables had more tables than inside. The issue is, they came with a very cavalier attitude. We talk about keeping at least 8 feet wide on the sidewalk unobstructed, including trees. And cavalier in the sense of, yeah, it's about 8 feet. But what are the specifics? It's 8 feet, and so what if it's not 8 feet? Maybe you were 6 inches or 8 inches off. What big deal is that? Please measure it, sir, and come back with the measurements, because that will determine how we want to proceed. And of course they came back, and there are new trees planted, tree pits out there. There are 5 trees, 3 of which are in front of the sidewalk cafe, and they're less than 8 feet. They're less than 8 feet. We had initially denied with our usual stipulations, unless our usual stipulations were applied. But we want to change the letter that we presented, that we have going to the full board. And it gets a little complicated, so we didn't want to bring it up necessarily at the full board. We just want to do it here. Just throw out some ideas. And we've never done this before. This came from Christine, was her looking at this. Well, instead of having a straight wall of tables, okay, where the 3 tree pits are and they're 2 tables wide, take out the tables where the tree pits are. And we would like to suggest that that's what we go ahead and do. That would be taking out the tree pits. That would take out like 4 tables. Rather than a straight line, it would be indented. So we'd have that 8 feet. Just want to know what people's reaction to that would be, if you follow what I'm saying.
I mean, that sounds reasonable. I think critically important, no matter what, that we maintain our 8 feet. And we really need to begin to, as a big fan of the way we've changed the streetscape, especially use of the curb lane, not necessarily sidewalk, but I think it's really important we start thinking about the precedent that we set, and we can't start chipping away at our 8-foot precedent here, especially on the sidewalk. And if this allows for the 8 feet, then I think it shows a desire to find a compromise. And I think that's a good place for us to be, because it's, I think, where we usually like to be in these situations at the end of the day.
Yeah. Thank you, Jeffrey. It would be elimination, I'm looking at the design, elimination of 4 tables on the sidewalk out of dozens, literally dozens of tables.
And this is for, isn't this a post-COVID plan? Like the restaurant isn't open, DCA is not accepting sidewalk cafe applications right now.
There's no sidewalk applications, cafes, in the way we used to do it traditionally through consumer affairs. None of that is going on.
Bert, am I wrong, or is the building still under construction?
The building is still under construction. It's the one with
the High Line?
It's
where the
east
park
of the High Line. It's east of the High Line at 18th Street and 10th, and it's the one with the strange fenestration. You know, the bay window. Rows and rows and rows.
Oh, it's the Heatherwick. It's the Heatherwick Studios building there. Yeah.
It's called the Lantern, as a matter
The
of fact.
Lantern, yes, Mike. That's exactly what it's called. And Heatherwick is the Heatherwick of the architects.
Roof barrel windows.
And supposedly the applicant tells us that people are moving in beginning January, February. I don't know.
Okay.
But he is not even thinking of opening up his restaurant until late spring, early summer.
Okay, so that you
So
can.
if I may, just one more. Is there a reason they're coming to us now for this, given that DCA isn't even accepting sidewalk cafe applications? And I am hesitant to approve it under current sidewalk cafe application guidelines, given all the changes with open restaurants, you know, all the sort of stuff. Like, is there a reason we have to? Is there a way we can get them to delay this, or we kind of are in the pipeline right now?
Frank, go ahead.
I was going to say, we definitely asked them that, because I think any traditional sidewalk cafe is at least a year away, maybe longer. They basically said they needed certainty as to, you know, what kind of capacity they were going to have. And I think, as Bert mentioned, because more than half of the tables are outside, I think it's important to their business plan, and they're claiming they need to know now if there's going to be opposition. But I agree with you, the rules could be completely different by the time they have to apply.
And it was a good point made by the owners there. You know, you really do have to know whether it's wise to make a commitment of that much money at this point without knowing that they're at least going to get past us, you know? So it's a good argument.
This applicant is not new to the business. This is not his first restaurant. He has a number of others, and he will be coming actually before us again. I'm not sure if it's next month or the month following, because it turns out he.
Bert, I think you should stop there. I'm not sure that's public yet.
Oh.
All right, well, he may be coming back to the committee at some point.
Okay. Thank you for catching me, Frank.
All right, so if he's coming back to the committee, if he does come back to the committee, let's phrase it that way, you'll have another chance to discuss this with him. And I haven't heard any other comments beside Jeffrey's on what we're thinking about the staggered sidewalk plan. Anyone else have any input for Bert on that? Alan?
Sounds reasonable.
Oh,
Alan?
Thank you.
Does taking out the tables, does that create like a wide space for people to like congregate? I mean, you're going to be walking this way, and then does it create a flow problem with more people hanging out waiting for, you know, does it traffic, is there a traffic problem at all?
I don't think so, Alan. It's a pretty wide sidewalk. It's not like up in Hell's Kitchen, you know, an old traditional skinny sidewalk. This is pretty wide.
I walk my dogs
And I-
there. We use that sidewalk a lot. Oh, they use the sidewalk a lot, excuse me.
Well, if this cafe goes in, they're not going to be able
Well,
to.
actually, they use the curb. They're very good dogs.
Okay.
They're very well trained. Anyhow.
No, I don't think you'll become congregating points.
No, but I certainly agree with Jeffrey. I think we need to keep to our standards.
Okay, thank you, guys.
All right, Bert, you said there was a second item?
That's Frank's.
Just remind me what it is, Bert.
It was the one, if I can, I'm just gonna.
Oh,
Remember?
yeah, the Brazil thing. I don't think we need to discuss that here. We were going to wait and see if there were further complaints.
Okay.
Yeah,
We were going to send a letter to the SLA advising them about it.
Just so there's no mystery, we've been hearing from people who live on 45th Street that certain restaurants on Restaurant Row appear to be open after 10 p.m. and doing something indoors, whether it's private events or what. But we've only gotten one specific report. So, Bert, I decided to wait until we hear at least from a second incident before we pursue this further.
Well, Leslie has her hand up. Maybe you'll hear from a second incident. Leslie?
No, I just wanted to, this is probably for Lowell or Frank or Bert. Are we going to expand upon what you're talking about? Are we going to, as a board, discuss the permanency of outdoor dining? I know other boards have taken up this topic vigorously. Are we going to have a discussion on it? Are we going to write a letter about, or go, I mean, I can't say write a letter because we don't know what we're going to discuss yet. But is there anything in the hopper to discuss the permanency of outdoor dining and how it's set up now?
Yeah, we discussed it at last month's BLP meeting. There's a draft letter floating around basically between Bert, Christine, and me, but it was such an open-ended issue that we thought would make sense would be to take the draft letter back to BLP at the January meeting and discuss it again before we get a broader group involved. So the issue will be discussed a second time at the January BLP meeting.
Thanks, Frank.
And everyone's invited, Leslie, to attend.
If that's an invitation, I might take you up on it.
All of our meetings are open to the public and open to anyone who wants to attend.
I know, I'm kidding.
And they've been lasting under 5 hours lately.
A bonus.
All right, anything else on the either the crazy violators or on the long-lasting open restaurant issue that people want to raise here now? Okay, Alan, you had an issue for new business, you said.
Well, it's a disturbing issue that we dealt with a year ago. Some of you may have heard that there was another suicide off the vessel. I want to thank Leslie for bringing it to our attention last week. It's more disturbing at this point because of what we attempted to do last year in our letter, what they said they were going to do, which we never heard, and they, I mean related, what they were going to do, which we never heard back. And at this point, this vessel, if you've seen the reports from the Post, the young lady who killed herself actually picked the vessel as a means for her suicide. So unlike something that happens, you know, somebody standing on a subway platform and for whatever reason jumps in front of a train, I don't know what the statistics are, but most suicides are just spur of the moment. This was a player. She lived in Brooklyn, came here, bought a ticket, went up to the top, and the vessel is still open and operating. I wanted to thank, I don't know, Maya's on the phone, on the line, but we did speak to Brad Holman's office, Maya, last week, and Brad, I spoke with Brad earlier today, and he's outraged by this. He's writing a letter or doing something with a suicide advocacy group. I'm not quite sure. But I mean, we have somebody in our midst, in our community, that has completely disregarded, disrespected, doesn't give two S's about what's happening, other than the fact that they want to maintain their own site for their visitors, make money, blah, 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 and all of that kind of stuff. So I don't know what we can do. I mean, do we need to write? Obviously, the letters don't penetrate, at least related, but this is state property from what I understand. I think we need to get the governor's office or somebody on the line here. This is going to become another New York University Library situation, as people feel that this is where, for whatever reason, and we never know why, but it's a terrible situation. I don't know what else to say.
Wait, I have a question.
I'm wondering, Maria and Joe, if we should haul related before your committee. Basically, put the item on the agenda for your committee and invite related to come explain. If you think that would work. I think sending another letter, whether from exec or wherever, isn't going to move them. I think we need to actually bring them in, whether that's a small meeting, that we have with them, or if we bring it to a committee meeting. And I think a committee meeting is a better way of publicly shaming them.
Well, can someone remind me what they were supposed to do before? Alan, you were saying they were going to do something or respond.
Yeah, I think the response
to do was to increase security, basically.
That was it.
But the response the response, yeah. Besides that, the response we got, I believe, I think JD might have mentioned it, is that they were going to hire experts to guide them and instruct them as what to do. So I think we should at least know, perhaps, who these experts were and what was the report that they got back. What were they told to do? Just to leave it alone the way it is? I mean, that'd be hard to, that would be very difficult to believe.
This event was as premeditated as possible. This young woman posted, I think it was on Instagram, she had a time-delayed story to post on her Instagram site. And it basically started, if you're seeing this, I'm gone. So she had that planned a day in advance to post her farewell message after she did this. So this was very premeditated, to Alan's point. JD?
They had promised two things. One, they would consult with some experts, suicide prevention experts. And secondly, they would train their guards. In our letter, we said, well, the experts are going to tell you to put up barriers. And secondly, when the Bops Library at NYU posted guards on every floor, it did not prevent a third suicide at the library. Our letter was very businesslike. We didn't accuse them. We said, please do something. My feeling is that our electeds should be put on notice that this is not acceptable. We are just advisory. We can write to related. I think we should write to them. I think we should write to the BID, the Hudson Yards Hell's Kitchen BID, because maybe other developers will be concerned about the reputation of Hudson Yards, and maybe they can put some pressure on related. But I really think we should put pressure on our electeds to do something about this immediately, which means putting up barriers, as Alan will tell us, is the only way to stop this. So my suggestion is we do write a letter, and we write a letter to our electeds, Gail, Brad, all of them, and saying you've got to make related do something.
I'm not opposed to that. I just thought a public shaming would be more effective. Joe?
Yeah, the cold hard fact is this is not state property. This is leased from the MTA to related. It is privately controlled, period. The electeds have no ability to influence this. The only thing related will respond to is being publicly called out about it. The electeds have no jurisdiction over this. It is a piece of private property, and they just don't. So I'm going to say, if you want to call them to a meeting, Lowell, that's the way to go, and ask them to come in. Just say that it's as simple as another suicide. What have you followed up? Have you made this safe? We need this thing safe in our community. But I would say at the same time, drop that to the post, because that's the issue here. It has nothing to do except these people want to make money for a fancy thing to show off, and they're not going to make it safe unless they're shamed.
Kit?
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
That's a big win because these are new wireless headphones from my wife for Christmas. I am not a suicide prevention expert, but I was living in the Bay Area when San Francisco was trying to figure out how to reduce suicides on the Golden Gate Bridge. And one of the big things that I took away from that was that publicity has the adverse effect that you would want to have in this situation, because it increases the possibility of copycat behavior by other folks who are contemplating similar things. So I think we absolutely need to do something about this and figure out how do we influence folks who can influence related. But I would just say a public meeting where we're bringing more attention to this incident actually could have the opposite impact that we aspire to have. All said, again, with the caveat that I'm not a suicide prevention expert.
I think that means the article itself brings more public, awareness to that site. My concern, I think whatever we do, I think we need to do something, because this is not the first suicide. It's certainly not going to be the last.
This is, I just want to remind everyone, Lowell, Jesse, you and me had a meeting with Related like 2 weeks before the city shut down about this topic. I remember some people were still shaking hands at that meeting and some were not, because COVID was just very new to us. And I think I don't know if we've been in touch with them since that meeting, but it would seem even just to pick up that conversation, because there was very specific discussion. I mean, I know many people were not satisfied with their response, so I'm not in any way looking to defend them, but I do think there was intended follow-up that COVID took away from us. And obviously now there's, real reason to revisit that.
All right, so I'm going to make a suggestion here. I saw a bunch of hands, but I got a suggestion. You're right, Jess, I do remember that meeting. What do people think if we invite them to a meeting with executive leadership of the board and basically say, we sent this letter, you haven't done anything, let's solve the problem. Tell us what you're going to do, or we're going to have to pass this on to the committee for a public hearing on this.
And when I served on transportation, the last time I remember anything to do with Hudson Yards was because of sidewalk renovations and fire lane movements. So let's make sure that Dale and Christine are in the forefront of that discussion, because that seems to be the only thing they come and ask us for is transportation issues now.
A revocable consent for sure around all that stuff. Yep,
right.
Absolutely. Good
so
point.
let's put some pressure on that way too.
Alan?
Going back to your public shaming issue, would it be out of the ordinary to write letters to their tenants? They have some pretty big profile tenants going in there, big law firms. I mean, is that?
I'm a little hesitant to do that, quite honestly.
Okay.
You could potentially run into a tortious interference with contract claim on that if we perceive it as we're trying to force them out of their lease.
I want to say one thing. My sense is we have to have one backup plan after another, because what we want them to do to put up physical barriers, they're not going to want to do. They said that from the beginning. They got the architects. Is that Heatherwick again, who did the vessel?
Yep.
I don't design defensive architecture. I mean, that's what he said to us in one way or another. They don't want to add anything that would detract, quote unquote, from their aesthetic. So we're going to come up against that, and we have to think about how we're going to answer that.
Bert, I've got the answer to that. How high are the railings up on the edge? You know, the observation deck.
It's a glass wall.
It's a glass wall.
Glass wall.
They were able to do it there. Why aren't they able to do it for the vessel? Unless there's an objection to what I'm saying, I think let's back up what Bert's saying, a multi-pronged approach. Let's bring them in for a private, let's ask for a private meeting. We'll talk to them. We can send a letter out of that meeting because it can be an administrative letter following up on our first letter, I believe, Jesse. Because we've already taken a position that they need to do something. We can send a letter after that. And if we don't like the responses, then we'll hand it to the Housing, Health and Human Services Committee to actually have a public discussion of this and invite them to come try and defend themselves in front of the public. Alan?
I wanted to ask Joe, is there any way for us to get MTA to put pressure on them?
The MTA has a 99-year lease with them. So,
Right.
and I doubt this is covered because it was never anticipated to be installed. We're dealing with two egoists here, Steve Ross and an architect.
Okay.
And how many people will die before it's bad enough publicity for them? That's all this is. They don't give a flying shit.
I don't know, but in their lease, aren't they supposed to, isn't it security issues?
There was
safety
nothing
issues that they
ever
have to
intended
abide
to
to?
be, it was a piece of sculpture. This version of that sculpture was not anticipated in any provision of the lease whatsoever.
Right.
And also something like this has been through the courts, I believe, with the George Washington Bridge, and the courts actually, I'll look back, ruled in favor of, not in favor of the family who the person committed suicide, saying that the architect, the city, or whoever is, in this case, it would be the vessel, the related, they're not liable because they are not responsible for someone's mental state. They're not
Right.
responsible
But that,
knowing someone's.
that was a public piece of public works. This is
Absolutely.
not a
No, I'm
piece of
just saying,
public
I'm
works.
just being
Got a
devil's
very different
advocate of
feel.
what they're going to come
Right.
back with.
Yeah, but there's also a law against, an attractive nuisance as well. We can make that kind of, I mean, if I'll talk to Jesse, if you think we can get them to set up a meeting, we can put together a cross section of the exec board. And quite frankly, unless there's any objection, Alan, I'd like to invite Carla to join us to keep some pressure on them. And we can go from there. And if they
That's
don't.
Alan's wife, right?
Yes, who also happened to have written a book about this subject that we cited in our letter.
Yes, I remember.
And she spoke very well, actually, when the first time it happened at our board meeting, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can do this and give them a chance. Let's go to them as grown-ups and give them a chance to say, okay, your plan didn't work. Now we need you to come up with a better plan to fix this. We can memorialize it in a letter. And if nothing happens, we refer it to the committee to deal with on a somewhat public basis. And
It's
we'll have
good. Let's do it.
JD.
Yeah, malgré what Joe was saying about it being a private area, I still think we should reach out to our electeds, especially Brad, because this is a public destination. And I think we should reach out to them also before this meeting to find out if there are any pressure in terms of legislation that they can bring to bear.
I suspect that if we have a meeting with Related and we invite Brad Whaleman, he'll show up.
Yeah, he's already.
All right. If that's Jesse, do you think can you reach out to Related and see if we can set something up for, if not this week, and tell them we want it this week because of the urgency. They're going to duck it. I know that. We're not going to get a meeting till after the first of the year, but let's hold their feet to the fire.
I'm fine with reaching out. I think they're going to want to know, since we're talking strategy here, they're going to want to know who's going to be there and who's.
We're still formulating our team.
Okay, but I'm saying there's a difference between saying CB4. That's
CB4
formulating our
executive leadership,
but including outside folks, and I'm not objecting to it. I'm just letting you know that having members of the public elected representatives, that's a.
All right, so I'll draw up a
I
contract.
think we need to start it just CB.
We're going to hire Carla as our consultant. Alan, will she take $1? We're having budget issues.
That's not how it
works. I'll explain it to her.
Says the lawyer.
Sure.
Why don't you, Jesse and Lowell, talk about this separately, because that's not the way to go.
We've got to wait. They're not going to meet with us until after the first of the year in all likelihood. They're going to claim that they're shut down.
Not the right people to talk about.
So we have some time to formulate a plan. But I think that's the way to go about it.
We do have the member of the public has raised their hand.
Yes,
on this.
I was just about to say, we've had this discussion. I know we've been at this for an hour and a half, but I do want to recognize that we have a member of the public, a woman named Renee, who has her hand up. And Renee, would you like to weigh in on this issue? Renee?
You can unmute yourself.
I mean, it would be nice if there were no more suicides and you can actually do something about it.
Nonsense to joy. That's right.
So, but you're right, they'll duck.
All right, but we're going to try. I mean, thank you for your All right. If anyone has anything else, speak now or forever hold your peace. I'll entertain a motion. Yes, Marty, were you waving yes or no? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right. Thanks for coming. Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year.
Stay well.
Everyone.
Happy New Year.
Jesse, are we meeting after this or not?
Safe New Year.
Sorry, yes. Port Authority Working Group is meeting afterwards.
How exciting. Thank you.
I'm glad you accepted.